Hello, beautiful angel. How are you? It's me, Sharon. I am here to continue my story from my last two YouTube videos. The first video was on the night that I broke my neck and the ensuing days. And the second video was on my first 5 months as a quadriplegic, as I was kind of shuffled between the ICU to a hospital, then to rehab. And I'm starting this story from the first time that I visited my new apartment with my ex, my then husband, after my injury. We had to move out of our home. My then husband had to pack up everything and move it out on his own while, he may have had help, but I wasn't there to help him because I was in rehab, going through physical and occupational therapy every day and being treated for intense anxiety, paranoia, and depression. I wanted nothing more than to die that first year of my injury, especially considering how my accident happened, that I caused it myself, that there was just so much shame and guilt and regret and remorse and disgust and just sadness that came from my injury. And it was very hard to find the will to live. I did eventually find the will to live, obviously, and I'll end the story there when I fly to America and find the will to live. But to start out, let me plant you in Dubai. This is before I get out of rehab, before I get out of therapy, the inpatient rehab that I had. I went to the new apartment with my occupational therapist and my then husband, and they wheeled me in and they said, "You can still reach the counters in here in the kitchen, so you can cook still." And I just looked at my hands and I thought about the knife skills that they contained, but that I would no longer be able to use. And using my knives was one of my favorite things to do in the kitchen. And it just seemed like such a small little taste of the abundance that I used to have in the kitchen that it absolutely devastated me. And that's when I asked my then husband to please not make me live this way. And that's when he, after I had been mentioning it for months in the injury so far at this point, that's when he downloaded the application to Dignitas in Switzerland. If you're not familiar with Dignitas in Switzerland, I have another video about that. In a nutshell, it's an organization that facilitates physician-assisted suicide for their clients. And that's the application that my then husband downloaded to fill out to be a client of Dignitas. Go to Switzerland, drink poison, and die. We started the application, and I set out looking for a psychologist that could help me do the paperwork that was required to prove that I was of sound mind and could make my own medical decisions before going to Switzerland. So before that time that I had the psychologist, let me just paint you what it was like to get home to this apartment, this new apartment, and not have it set up the way I wanted, and not really liking it, and being, it was a nice apartment. It was on the Palm Jumeirah. It had a balcony that overlooked an entire, big park area. They had shops and restaurants everywhere. It was a nice apartment for all intents and purposes, but to me, it was devastating because I missed my own home, my old home, and the way that I had decorated it and fixed it just the way I liked. So once I get home from rehab, I am staying with a nurse during the day, and this nurse has to intermittent cath me. So every 4 hours, she has to put me in bed, spread my legs, stick a straw catheter into my urethra, and drain my bladder. Now, despite me being paralyzed, I still was able to slam my legs closed, or rather, my legs snapped closed on their own anytime somebody would try to touch my private area. I hated and loathed and was horrified by the fact that my then husband had to change my brief when I had had a bowel movement. And I had such a privacy about me in my marriage before that it was just devastating. And I cried and I cried. I remember feeling unworthy of clothing, and one time actually telling my then husband to just go ahead and lift me into the wheelchair without any pants on. And I just sat there in my brief, in my diaper, until I realized that I felt like it wasn't good enough to not be wearing pants, that I deserved more than to just sit there in a diaper. And so I wore clothes, but I still didn't feel worthy of them. And most of them were like my then husband's pajama pants and old sweatpants and just kind of raggedy clothes. I had a complete disregard for materialism. In fact, I even had a nightmare about materialism. And when people ask me, what does a nightmare about materialism look like? It was strip mall after strip mall after strip mall, and every place I went inside had towers and towers of shoe boxes, and it was just too much stuff for anyone to ever need. And I felt this deep pain over how materialistic the world was, because I had been through something so severe that all material things ceased to have a value. For example, when my mother first came to the hospital and I spotted her $30,000 diamond ring on her finger, I was like, why does that exist? Why does that exist? Why does a 2 and some carat diamond need to even exist? Because it's so far removed from what's important. During this time that I was alone in this apartment during the day, I would sit on the balcony and I would put birdseed out on the railing so that I could watch birds during the day. And watching birds monumentally helped me heal. I would stare at these finches and pigeons day after day after day, and I would swear that I could tell them apart. Other people wouldn't believe me, but I knew that I was right, that there were individual differences between each finch and each pigeon, and even personality differences between the birds. This helped cement this idea in me that everything is unique. We are all unique. We are one of a kind. We are needed here. There's a spot exactly the shape of us in this universe that we are filling. And it's only possible to be filled by us because we are who we are. And we are these unique, beautiful individuals. I was watching birds. I was applying for assisted suicide with my psychologist. I eventually got a psychologist, and she gave me therapy every week, and I had to take a 676 question true or false test to determine the competency of my mind, the I want to say virility of my mind, like to see if I was of sound mind to make my own medical decisions. I was so logical that first year about why I wanted death. It's not physically worth it. It's not emotionally worth it. It's not financially worth it for me to live, I would say. It was hard for people to argue with me, they said, because I was just so logical without emotion. It was scary, actually, for me to be like that. It was like I was a different animal. I felt like it was my job to research death. That's what it felt like. It felt like everything was riding on me researching death and determining what I thought of death. And if I thought that I might cease to exist and never exist again. And in that case, was I okay with that outcome, considering that I hadn't lived the rest of my life and I was only 30 years old? And should I go to Switzerland? Is it the right decision to make? And to do this research on death, I ended up watching people die on the internet. There used to be a subreddit called Watch People Die. And you could literally just scroll for hours watching people die in all these horrific ways. Security cam footage, driver footage, war footage. I saw people die in so many different ways, and it was horrifying, but I felt like I needed to see it to understand death. And so I kind of viewed it without much emotion and felt like I was kind of pulling my pants up to like get ready for this death thing. I was ready to face my own death. And I did. I faced my own death completely. During this time, I remember saying to myself, what about your Buddhism? You were a practicing Buddhist before, or not necessarily a Buddhist, but you practiced Buddhism. So I asked myself, what about Buddhism now? And the voice in my head returned my query by saying, not now. I can't focus on my Buddhist spiritual path now that I'm paralyzed and I've lost everything and I'm incontinent and I'm in so much severe pain from having lost my body and trying to grieve the life that I left behind. I knew that I was being foolish. I knew I was being hypocritical. That did not sit well with me, and I was angry at those understandings. It was during this time that I started making videos for my family and my then husband for when I was going to be dead, for them to watch. You can see one of these videos here on my YouTube now. It's called My Understanding of Life. I made that video when I was completely suicidal and believed that I was going to die. So you can see that here on YouTube. As I applied for assisted suicide in Switzerland, my then husband was supportive of this idea. I had about $160,000 of insurance money in his account, and he told me that he would want to go to Switzerland too, and he supported me, and that I should leave the money behind for him and our mutual friend to start a business, and that my legacy would be funding this business. He told me that I should name the business because it would be my legacy. But when I came up with a name, he showed me that he already had a name, a logo, and everything already picked out for the business. It was very screwed up the way that my constant company during those months was so encouraging of me dying for a bit of money. He transferred the money out of the country, and I didn't care about it. I didn't care about money at all that first year. In September, I had what we called my last birthday ever. I was turning 31, and my sister came into town from Florida. She came to Dubai, and my ex made an elaborate show of my birthday that year. He got us spa treatments at home, and then booked us a room at Nobu He was able to get the room by telling them that I was a new quadriplegic and was concerned about eating in front of other people with my hands. And they allowed us to have one of the fancy, very expensive rooms, private rooms. And we enjoyed a delicious Nobu dinner with my sister and a best friend that had been there so much for me after my injury. It was an excellent meal, but still, I wanted nothing more than for it to be my last birthday ever. And so my sister, with my cake, she sang me, "Happy last birthday ever to you. Happy last birthday ever to you. Happy last birthday ever, dear Sharon. Happy last birthday ever to you." And I loved her for that. I loved her so deeply for that. Just to feel like somebody else was reacting the way that I wanted to react. Somebody else understood me. That was my first little sister, my first friend, whom I love more than anything. I love all my sisters more than anything. My brother-in-law, Robert, was also around. He would stay at the apartment sometimes. He was quiet, and I wasn't really sure why he was around. I suppose it was for moral support for his brother. But I think that he was there for me. I think that he felt a kinship to me and had a crush on me and wanted to be involved with my well-being. So he was there, and I remember his presence. He's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person, and I love him deeply. And then, kind of lastly here, what I'm going to mention is Trump was elected. And I was horrified about this. I was horrified that Trump was elected, and I felt in that moment like I'm leaving behind an awful world for my family. And I'm not going to be here to help in any capacity, because what could I do? I couldn't do anything. That's what I believed. I didn't believe I could do anything towards the betterment of the world. I went through all of this, and then over the course of, like I said, 7, 8, 9 months, and then I flew back to Florida to see my family for my last trip goodbye. My last trip home to say goodbye. And it was during this time in Florida that I found the will to live, and that is where I will pick up the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching and staying till the end. I hope that this story allows you to know me a little bit more intimately and just give you an idea of some of the things you can go through when you face a catastrophic injury or a major life-changing disability. I love you all, and I look forward to the next video. Please stay in touch, follow me here, subscribe, like, comment. I read all the comments, even though I don't respond to them all. I love your comments. Thank you so much for them. You can also email me, it's the same as my YouTube name, SharonJamelBrown@gmail.com. And catch me on TikTok. I'm Sharon Loves You on TikTok and on Instagram, and I'm live on TikTok often. So I hope to see you around, and again, I look forward to the next video. And once more, thank you so much for listening. I love you, and have a great day.